Hi, I'm Melody.
And I'm Candy.
And you're listening to
Quirks, Bumps,
and Bruises. We always love it when we have special guests in our studio along with us, and we have just that this morning. From Energize Ministries, Cindy and Charlotte. And they're here for a special reason today because March, from what I understand, is Pastors' Wives Month. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I've always said this, Cindy, the hardest job in the world is being a pastor. The second is being his wife.
That is so true.
You're right.
And I feel like sometimes they get a little bit put to the side, so to speak.
And I just want to say that honoring our pastors and pastors' wives is actually very biblical. Mm-hmm. In 1 Thessalonians, it tells us to honor those who are our leaders in the Lord's work, for they work hard among you and give you spiritual guidance. And that's just so important. And it's okay to have that time where we recognize them. A lot of them don't want the recognition,
right?
And they'd rather they not have it. But, we all need encouragement. Mm-hmm. And that's really important.
Let's talk a little bit about, we've already touched on this a little bit, but some of the expectations about pastors' wives.
Sure. A lot of times churches have expectations, and I do think they're doing better. Like you said, Melody, they're doing better at that. A lot of pastors' wives have jobs now, so they're not just at home able to do everything that the church needs. And if volunteers don't come up, they always feel that pressure to, I have to do it then if nobody else is going to volunteer. And, I think it's really important that we realize that our pastor and his family, they're human. They're not perfect. They are going to make mistakes. And we need to be able as a church to give them grace and to not expect their children to be perfect. Let their children be children, and give them the opportunity to grow and make their mistakes and learn from them and learn, about forgiveness and learn about how the church is able to show forgiveness and grace to each other as believers.
And you have such a great quote that you were mentioning to me a while ago, and I think it's so true.
Yes, this is from actually a pastor's wife. And she said, I carry so many jobs in the church, and it keeps popping into my head that I don't feel seen. And yet I know I'm always watched. And she said that doesn't make sense to her. But yet, it's true. They do so much behind the scenes that people might not ever acknowledge. And they might be there before the doors even open, doing those things to decorate the church or get ready or clean the church or whatever it is. But yet they feel like they're in that glass house and everybody's watching them and judging them. So I think now that we have more of a grace mentality in the church, I think that needs to be extended to the pastor's family as well.
If we always treat others the way we want to be treated, I think that's biblical. If you look at a situation and go, if that were me and if I were the pastor's wife, how would I want others to treat me? And then if you do that to your pastor's wife, it's a win-win. I do know as pastors' wives, there are expectations, I guess you would say, to be a certain way. Can we talk a little bit about that? Charlotte, you want to weigh in on that?
Yes, I'd love to. I think with pastors' wives, lots of times we put real high expectations on ourselves. Sometimes when pastors' wives come to a different church, the congregation expects them to do things maybe the other pastors' wives did before. And it's very hard. And sometimes I call our pastors' wives their unsung heroes because they do so much behind the scenes that they aren't recognized for. And like Cindy said, sometimes they don't recognize, but they want to be appreciated and valued. And that's what we do at Energize Ministries. We like to encourage them all year round, and we have different events in which we do that. One event we have every other month is called Coffee Connections, and it's just for pastors' wives, and it's where pastors' wives get together. We provide a safe environment where they feel loved and appreciated, and that way they can talk to other like-minded pastors' wives and just love on each other and encourage each other. And we do that every month, so we would love to have any pastors' wives that would like to come. Please come. We would love to have you.
I think it's always good to have that support group of other people, no matter what you do, that understand. And who can understand being a pastor's wife better than other pastors' wives? And are both of you pastors' wives?
I was a pastor's wife for 40 years and also grew up as a PK, a pastor's kid in a pastor's home.
So you've had all of the perspective. And you, Charlotte?
I am not a pastor's wife, but I love to encourage women. That is just passion. My husband is actually doing evangelism now, so I could say that I am starting to be a pastor's wife.
I started to say, yes, you are. You're a pastor's wife. And in a different kind of way maybe than just the local church, but definitely you are a pastor's wife. I do love that they can have that kind of connection along with other pastors' wives talking and working through things. And how do you handle this? And what if this happens? And my heart goes out to pastors' wives because I feel like you said, Charlotte, a lot of times they're compared to maybe a previous pastor's wife. The kids are expected to be perfect.
Yes.
I cannot believe that. That is our pastor's children running through the halls, or whatever. And so again, the expectations are set very high for pastors' wives.
I was going to tell a personal experience when my husband took over for a pastor that was retiring and had been there a long time. His wife came to me the day that her husband retired and handed me a whole stack of files and said, all right, well, here's all your new jobs that you have to do. And it was like, it didn't matter if that was my gifting or, we were in different seasons of life and I had a ton of small children.
Yes.
And so sometimes the church just expects the pastor's wife to do what the last one did. And the other thing I wanted to say is sometimes pastors' wives put those expectations on themselves too. They think, they have this idea of what the typical pastor's wife needs to be. And they might always be comparing themselves to that level. And that might not be what God has planned for them.
Right. Because we expect them to sing in the choir, teach Sunday school,
play the piano
while singing in the choir and teaching
children's ministry. Yes.
Just so many things that are expected of them. I do think we've made a little headway in past years.
I think so too.
From what that used to be. You think of the hats and the white gloves and the pastor's wife just always being so perfect. And I think as time has evolved and we are, I think living, and I think social media may have done a lot of this. We live in a very transparent society now, or it's not always real, but it is more transparent than it used to be. So I think that pastors' wives are beginning to say, hey, I can only do so much. I know in the case of my daughter, she has an almost 2-year-old now. She is a school teacher.
Right.
So when you are that in church, they expect you to teach all the children, So she does do a few things, but she has really learned to say no.
Good.
And I think that is vital because you can't do everything and do it well.
Right.
So do what God has called you to do, even if it's one thing, or even if you're in a season where you can't do anything, that is okay.
Because even in those seasons where they might have small children and they might be homeschooling and don't have those times, she is still her husband's helpmeet. She's his biggest fan. She's there to support him. And that's what God created her to do.
Yeah.
And her role is to be his cheerleader and to be his prayer warrior and to be his support system. So she's still doing her job as a pastor's wife by doing those things.
And I think too, I know that I've heard her say, I hope I don't ever hear anybody talk bad about him because, a lot of times that can happen. Something can be said. And knowing my daughter, I don't think that would end well for anyone.
Well, or even about our children. I was on this blog with some other pastors' wives and they were sharing, how do you handle it when the church members are trying to correct your children when you're standing right there?
Yeah.
Then the mama bear kind of comes out.
The mama bear comes out. Absolutely. So how can we encourage our pastors' wives? Charlotte, I ask you this. What are some ways that we can show love and encouragement to our pastors' wives?
Well, I think each and every day that can do things to really make our pastor's wives feel appreciated and values. There's some things I'd like to send out to you that you could do. Maybe you can send your pastor's wife a card. Maybe you could take her out to lunch. Just a simple thing to say, thank you. We appreciate you. Goes a long ways because she does have a hard job with her family, raising her family and supporting her husband. So let's this month and every month give our pastor's wives the love she needs.
I know that being in ministry like I was on staff for 36 years, and it didn't take a lot to be encouraged. It's just that somebody did something. They took the time to put a note on my desk or after church, hand me a gift card to a restaurant and say, you and your husband go out to lunch today after church. Just in the normal everyday life that we live within our church families, it is very simple and easy to just acknowledge your pastor's wife.
Sometimes we are so so easy to criticize, and it doesn't cost us anything to be an encourager and to lift them up and positive. And if you are one who it's like the first thing you think about, oh, that music is too loud today, or it's too cold in this sanctuary, or, why doesn't the cleaner do better? Let's just change our mentality a little bit and be one to try to find the positive and try to look for the good, because it's there if we'll take the time to do that and don't let Satan steal the joy by only seeing the negative that's there.
Churches would be transformed if we all had that attitude, just looking for the positive and realizing that I think for the most part, everybody's doing their best. And for those pastors' wives that are young moms, like I can tell you right now, she's tired. And then having to go home, reorganize everything, and then go back to church on Wednesday nights, and then back home. It's just a lot. So you don't even have to spend a penny to go to your pastor's wife, especially those that have young children, and just say to them, I want you to know that you are doing a great job. And we are so thankful that you are our pastor's wife. God has blessed us with you. We love you. And we just want you to know you are really knocking it out of the park. So as you go throughout the week and you're thinking about your pastor's wife, ask God to help you to know what to do for your pastor's wife. Is it just an encouraging word, which goes a long way? Would it be to share a small gift? Would it be to write a note? But the important thing is to do something to show your love and your appreciation to your pastor's wife. Cindy, talk to us a little bit about how important it is for pastors to protect their family time.
Spiritual burdens that pastors carry and their families, they're under spiritual attack. And it's really important that, in the day of cell phones, he's never away from somebody who needs him. And to be able to give them, first of all, protected family time. And then someone else, I just recently read, pastor just was describing to the wife of what it's like to be a pastor. He said, it's like carrying a refrigerator around on your shoulders every day. And the weight of knowing that you're responsible for the spiritual well-being of your whole congregation, that weight just never leaves you. Yeah. And so they're dealing with people on the worst days of their lives sometimes, when they've tragically lost people and stuff like that. So they go through compassion fatigue and all of that. So it's really important for these times to get away, but it's also really important to give them uninterrupted family time so they get a break from the burdens that they're constantly carrying.
I think so many times my pastor recently came in to Joy FM and we did a podcast and we did a long series of breaks on sabbaticals for pastors. And that is one of the things that we talked about, that family time is so important. I remember telling my daughter and my son-in-law, there's going to be a time where you're going to have to choose between going to your little boy's first t-ball game or Betty Lou's toe surgery. And I said, you are going to choose your son's first t-ball game because you have others in the church, deacons and elders. That is why they are there to assist you, to walk alongside you. And you are going to have to, because it is very easy for pastors to get caught in that church family. A lot of times, who do they want? They want the pastor. Well, he is only one person. And so I so agree, Cindy, with what you just said. You have to protect that family time. And those are memories and things that these families will never get back. Now, there are times where pastors have to. There are very urgent, extreme situations where they may have to leave a family situation to go. I remember the first Christmas, my daughter and my son-in-law were married, and the very first Christmas they had, he was at the hospital with a church member whose wife was passing away on Christmas Day. Their very first Christmas. He had to do that. Understand? He understood. She understood. But I think you have to weigh and balance that family time.
And not only that, sometimes it's like, well, that's my job. And so they could be, especially when it's spiritually related. It's like, well, that's what God expects me to do. That's what I'm supposed to do. And sometimes wives feel jealous of the church.
Yes.
Because, that the church is her husband's mistress because that's where he spends all of his time. And the church comes first when there's a need. What if I need him? I don't have him.
Yes.
So those are hard. And then
you're exactly right, Sandy. And I had one pastor's wife when I was mentoring her and talking with her. She did have that kind of resentment towards the church for taking away her husband. And she said someday she would just like to take his phone and just throw it in the woods.
According to a study, 4,000 to 5,000 pastors quit each year. They don't quit because they have lack of faith in God. They don't quit because they don't believe in the calling God has placed on their lives. Most don't quit because of financial reasons. They quit because they're overwhelmed and mentally exhausted.
Yes.
And so
another reason sabbaticals are so important.
But that makes the pastor's wife's job even hard because she's the one who has to come home and rally him and say, listen, hon, you can still do it. And, and then she gets discouraged. So they both need that time apart and the time away.
And we believe at Energize Ministries that healthy ministers equals healthy churches. So that is what we're here for, to encourage.
Yes, and you're doing a beautiful job of it.
Thank you.
I'm just so appreciative of both of you for taking your time to come in and talk about something so very, very important.
Thanks for listening to the Quirks, Bumps, and Bruises podcast with Candy and Melody. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and share the podcast. You can learn more at joyfm.org.
Try Peas and Carrots podcast for more encouragement. Brian and Kayla share life from their piece of the vegetable patch. Expect a laugh, find common ground, and hear stories you can't wait to share. It's a podcast about doing life together, growing in Christ together, and learning to laugh no matter what comes your way. Search Peas and Carrots podcast wherever you listen to podcasts today.